What's up, YouTube? So just because my relationship with Pharaoh is bad doesn't mean that that's what it has to be for you. You should still afford yourself the opportunity to hear him out. So Google Pharaoh's House Potisode Archive. It's like a couple hundred free ones there. If his website's not working, pharaohshouse.com. And everybody should probably consult with him at some point in their life because it's worth more than anything else you're going to spend 40, 50 bucks on or whatever, how much he costs right now. I don't know. But you're wasting your money talking to other people and spending money on other things. You should probably definitely spend your money with Pharaoh before you spend it with someone else that you can find online. Just saying. And I have a bad relationship with him, and I still would suggest that. I mean, just because I know, um, ultimately, like I said, like I'm his enemy and to him, so it's almost like the Talmudic Jew thing, where like the Talmudic Jews don't feel like they owe anything to people that are not Israelites. So it's kind of like the same thing. So I get it. You know what I mean? I don't really knock him or nothing for the way he is. I just gonna be with myself about it. You know what I mean? Be over here with it. So I don't feel like you guys should cut yourself off from Pharaoh just because of anything really, of something that I said or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I feel like you should definitely check him out. So I just wanted to say that before I go into this. So tapping into yourself from the outside in. When you tap into yourself gently from the inside out, whether it be through breath work or qigong or anything, tai chi, or just playing your sport, whatever it is, whatever you're doing from the inside out, generated from the inside out, um, it's it's different than when you do it from the outside in through via substance, through some type of external chemical that will force a chemical response, because that's what being high or drunk or whatever is. Like, you take the chemical on or the substance or whatever, the mushroom or the fungus from the acid or whatever, and then your body releases endorphins that respond to it, and that's what you enjoy. You enjoy your body. You're not enjoying the drug. The body, the drug is just forces rape, is forcing you to have those experiences, and that's tapping in from the outside in. And when you do that, you lose more and more trust for yourself, because it's just like if you were to break into your own house. It's like if you lost the keys to your own house and then you start breaking into your own house, start going through the back door and through the window, and then you're tripping the alarm still. Your body's going to still is now going through like an autoimmune response, because now you've become an invader to yourself. So the more that you go outside yourself to tap into yourself, the more you lose trust for yourself. And then from that point, then you're going to look more so at yourself as an enemy, as an invader. And the body is going to look at any opportunity where you're going to have that chance to be your true self, or it's starting to surface. The body's going to hate that and refute that, because it's now been raped into this trauma response, essentially, to where the self is now the bad guy, because the way you brought yourself to the surface. It's masturbating when you're doing it that way. You're bringing this up. It's like if you were to force a near-death experience just to get the DMT release, it's the same thing as just doing DMT. You're masturbating. You're baiting the master. You're baiting God. Like, it's like if you were to take a life, you risk your life just to see, I don't have any self-worth, so let me just risk my life and see if God shows up or the creator shows up. And then that's masturbating. You're baiting the master to show up. So it's basically what you're doing. You're like, I don't want to do the work or undo the work, the damage. So I'm just going to smoke weed or do mushrooms or do acid or drink or whatever to bring the self to the surface, or to just bring all my defenses down to where myself can come through. It might not all be self, but myself can now come through, with the host or the horde of parasites as well. So, that's a lot of times with people with drinking too. Like, a drunk could be spot on because the self can come right through, but then it's not going to be sustained. So then the parasites come through, and then it's just a wash, and people really don't know their self from their parasites at that point. So when you got a bunch of aboriginals going outside of themselves to tap in, then they lose trust for themselves, then they lose trust for the people around them, and then that's what that parasites will then manifest to regulate for them. If you have a bunch of aboriginals, people that have a birthright to the land of the world, if you have a bunch of them not working together because they don't trust themselves, so they can't trust others now, then a parasite manifests, a demon manifests to regulate their life for them. And then the more that that continues, and if the parasites now are collectively working together to advance that, the more that that continues, the more that, more fragmentation, and then more parasites manifest, and then it's just more regulation, more government, more external government, instead of people being in alignment with the internal government. And that's what is. So you have what is. Let me show you this, my notes real quick. Let me see if I can spin my anyway, it's probably gonna be upside down now. But you can see what is, though. What is. What is at the core. And then you can have these other seasons here, summer, fall, winter, spring, of consciousness. But what is timeless. It doesn't change. So what is what always was and what always will be. And the more that you get into what isn't, the more that you're going to go into the power structure of parasites. Because, it's the parasite party, ruling the illusion. It's pretty much like if you looked in the reflection and your reflection started to mock you, in a sense. It's kind of like what, where we're at. That's the parasites that run this world, basically. Projections that have now become self-realized enough to continue to aid in the perpetuation of the illusion and the severance or the dubbing over of what is. Because like I was saying another few videos back, or in the podosodes with Pharaoh, he was saying that, like, if you have a cassette and you continually dub over it, the original impression on that tape is still there. No matter how many times you dub over top of that tape, it's still the original song, or whatever original recording is still impressed upon that. So you got however many lifetimes pressed on your tape, and it's all still there. And that's all on top of what is. So it's like what is the eternity, the eternal part of you that always resides in what is, right? So then you have all these dub overs. So like the more that you get away from yourself, go outside yourself to tap into yourself, the more that you're going to fall asleep in the dream, or reality rather. And then you're going to wake up in unreality, the UN, United Nations reality that we're in right now, which is like a dream within a dream within a dream within a dream within a coma. So like it's the further that you're getting from your center is like the further that you get from the what is. It's tough to explain it, but it's what is. It's the constant. There is the constant. There's the eternal, which doesn't change, and then there's the temporal or the temporary that does change, and that's the illusion. Everything that changes is the illusion. So that which is unchanged and constant and it is all-encompassing is that which is eternal. That's what is. And then so there's a physical eternity, what people might call heaven or Eden or whatever they call that. There's a physical eternity, and when you have DMT trips or whatever, you get insight into that. Because like as if you're in one place, say if you're in this cabin right here, it's built in 1942, right? Right in the middle of the last World War. So you're in this cabin in 1942 and you hit the DMT, whatever was here in this place is what you experienced during that DMT trip. You're experiencing this same time and space without uninhibited. So you're seeing it, all of it concurrently. 600 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 30,000, or however you want to look at it. You're seeing it. You're seeing the timeless part of it, that which is, because this spot is still that which is just a dub over, because this is an illusion. This dream is on top or beneath what is, however you want to look at it. It's dubbed over. Let's say it's on top, just to stay with the tape reference. So this life is like a dub over. And then if you hit the DMT and the dub over, you not only see this part of the light spectrum, you see all the other parts of the light spectrum. You see that which is. So if you're in a house, you hit the DMT, you might be in that same house 200 years ago and it's more colonial, or you might be under an ocean or in rock or whatever, because throughout the different thousands of years, the consciousness changes. Because again, you could look at death as more so like inanimate life. and life is animated death or animated ego death. So inanimate life or abstract life, it still has a physical element to it. And we would call that rocks, mountains, and stuff like that. That's all consciousness still. It's just inanimate. And people don't have respect for that because they don't respect the inanimate part of themselves. So they can't respect the external inanimate. So when you're hitting a DMT or you have these experiences where you have full spectrum view like that, you're getting in touch with the inanimate or the abstract part. And also, you can see the concrete a lot more clearly with that perspective. So you see the timelessness of wherever you were. It's just like that one movie where the guy hit the drug and then, the times changed and he's in the same place and everything. But anyway, to digress about it, that's what's going on. We're in like however many dub overs from what is. So, we're you can look at it again, like I was saying, like seasons. You have your golden age, say in 1,030 years, right? Because that's 13, which would be 2030 really, because according to Pharaoh, we're in 1,022. So Agenda 2030 would be the Great Reset point, and that would also be 1,030. And so the way I'm looking at it is it's all seasonal. And then you have different perceptions of time in those seasons. So in a golden age, or when the collective is in a golden place, or a place where there's a harmony to the point where everything can fully mature, the trees, everything fully matures and becomes crystallized or Christ-like or whatever. The perception of time is different. So if you live like biblical times, 700-800 years, Methuselah, however many years, like 1,000 years from Methuselah. So your movements back 1,030 years ago, when the Great Reset began, because that's when the Great Reset began. People reached the pinnacle of civilization. In other words, we call that Egypt. We call the pinnacle of civilization Egypt, pretty much, even though it goes by many different names. And if we look at Egypt, the real Egypt as America, and the Mississippi being the Nile, and the River Jordan being in Utah, et cetera, then, and Zion being also in Utah. If you're looking at stuff like that, and you really realize the reality of, Sedona being Babel Tower and everything, then you can see that was when we reached a golden age, or that was a point when the pinnacle of society or civilization of man and mankind or what have you had reached its pinnacle. And at that point is when it's all in a loop right now. It's in a parasitic loop. So it reaches that pinnacle point and then it begins to collapse. So it's 1,030 years of collapsing that happens from the top of the hill there. So whatever actions were being made on the way up the hill that might not have seemed like a lot, because the people that were on their way to the golden age and as life was advancing like that, it was probably the perception of abundance is great. So small deviations when you're in that create massive ripples now 1,030 years later. So even in a golden age, you can't be careless. In no ages can you be careless. And in a dark age like now, we would just make the most of the dark. It's still no separation. So in a dark age, say you don't have no family structure, no friends or whatever, none of that stuff, no culture, no language, no actual true selfless love. It's still there. It's changed in the sense that you change $1 for 4 quarters. It's still $1 though. The value's still there. It's just not all there in the way that you'd like it to be. So your family, your friends, your mentors, all these people, they're there, but they're not there in a sense like they're let's just say they're in a different part of the dub over, or they're in what is. And it's always still there. There's no separation and there's no lack. It's always there. You just don't want things to be fragmented. You want things to come in. You want a being to come in completely, go through their process, leave completely so that they can come into their next experience completely. And there's no baggage or leftover fodder or fragments. So, so you can stay present. The more that you're in one, the more that you can stay present, and then the more that you can actually grow. So Um, you got your different seasons of consciousness, like I was saying. So we're in a dark age now. And so the people, those tutors and all that, they're just metaphysically here. That presence is still here. It hasn't gone anywhere. So we're in a winter, I guess you could say, of consciousness. The compost season or whatever of consciousness, where everything is going back into it's getting eaten up by the worms and being primed for spring. And then that would be like your Jubilee season. So right now we're going through the end of the reset. Things are going to fully reset. Suffering's probably going to reach its peak around 2030 or maybe shortly thereafter. It's going to look like biblically, like Satan has taken over completely, like Revelations. And Satan does take over for a moment, and then the beast is put back in its corner of hell or whatever for however long. The reference is no different, like Pharaoh was saying, than from the parasite. The parasite will grow, say, if it's just in one person during the golden age. And then it just continues to spread through rape, through controlled rape, which is just sensuality or casual sex or, vanity sex. That's all controlled rape. So the parasite expands through all of that. And the parasite festers in distraction and insecurity. So if you breeding a bunch of people out of survival or rape or vanity, they have no choice but to be insecure offspring. So different seasons, you're going to get different crops and different beings. So you could look again like at what is. You can look at what is. You can look at what is again, like kind of like the equator. You can look at it like the equator, where you say like, what is, not the dub overs. What is that natural line where life, the equator, and so you have homeostasis, consistent homeostasis, and the further you get from that, the more the seasons are drastic and separate. It's not just a wet and dry season at that point. It's not just yin and yang and daily balance like in the equator where you could get rain at any time. Different. Depending on where you're mostly in the world, it's going to be subtropical around the equator. So, the further it can house a lot of life, a lot of potential for life in that harmony. So the further you get from that, the more that you're going to get into seasonal beings that can't be here or can't be at the equator. They can't live in what is. So the only way that they can live is if the illusion expands. So the more illusion, like if you have a dub over, like if we were to have, if you live in what is, and then collectively people created another dream that like to experience through, kind of like the Matrix when they created dreams for the military so that they could train to kill people but not actually do it. So say you're in what is, and then you create another level or a dream, an illusion to go into so that you can learn through, so that you can return back to what is and then expand and then grow. And then you can basically grow what is. And that's what a golden era is, more so like where all of the levels are not separate from the core. But the parasites would like for the illusion to grow. So the more that people live in illusion away from their core, away from eternity, not in touch with eternity, with themselves, the more that the seasonal beings get to exist in physical form. They always exist, but they don't always have a body. So you have like, with most beings that are seasonal beings, they're going to be ran by parasites typically, as far as beings that are human-like. They're going to be ran by parasites. They're going to die traumatically or die, unnaturally awake so that they, or if they do die asleep, they'd be like in an aneurysm or something. So it's not really natural. So that they get all their memories wiped. And then there's so much separation between the next life. It's because you're losing all those memories. So then it's like a purgatory between that life and the next life. And then you're going to come back most likely through rape sex. Because like when you have sex, you're channeling. So if you having rape sex, which is based on just friction and moisture, controlled rape, if that's what your emphasis is and not the energy and the circulation of the energy and if in the breath and just being aware and being present, if you're having sex for friction and moisture and just release of responsibility, because energy is responsibility, if that's why you have sex, then you're having sex for control rape. So when you're having controlled rape sex, you're only going to be able to channel a certain kind of being, most likely a being that died traumatically, because it can synchronize with that. It's trauma bonding. The point of attraction is now a trauma. So now it's a trauma bond. So you dying traumatically, and then you're coming through a traumatic rape sex session. So you raped out of the world or raped back into the world. So then that's another gap between yourself and your body, because trauma creates amnesia. So you're going to die traumatically, amnesia, lose all the memories from that life. Even though it's the same memories being looped, you still lose them. It's just now coming back all fragmented now, and you kind of have a hunch that you might have existed before. So then your purgatory between life and death expands. The more that you have a bunch of wiped lives, where you just, like Sonic, when you get hit and you drop all the coins. When you get attacked in the game Sonic, you lose all the coins, you lose all your memories, basically. You know what I mean? Your rings. You look at it like DNA. So like you my train of thought here. Okay, so yeah. So I was just talking about the channeling of the rape sex. So when you're leaving and going traumatically, then there's this huge gap between life and death, and then there's this huge gap between dreams and waking life, and there's this huge gap between your physical self, your body, and your actual metaphysical self or whatever. So the more that separation festers, the more parasites are going to manifest in between it, and then continue to try to separate and fragment you, because you're being chewed. When you chew something, you're breaking it down, fragmenting it, and shitting it out, turning it into compost, to be reused again. So that's pretty much the parasite process, and let me see my other notes here. Let's see. It's like, again, it's just identity theft, ultimately. The whole parasite thing is just body snatching. It's subtle, and then it manifests. If you have whispers in your life now, that are malevolent whispers in your brain, and thoughts that are in your brain that, are not in accord with your purpose or the collective, a few generations down the road, those whispers will be screams, and then your progeny will be acting on that. So it's the care the care has to be constantly taken. You have to constantly give a care, or take a care, however you look at it. So, like I was saying, I was talking to Pharaoh about receptors, and he was saying, like, again, like seasonal beings, you can only come in at different times. If you didn't realize yourself enough, you're not going to be able to collapse that dream or that dub, return to a lower dub, collapse that one, then you can return to return to yourself. But you're moving forward in this process, ironically. So the more that you're distracted, the less likely that you'll be able to realize yourself, and then you're constantly just going to keep getting wiped over and over again. So you don't even get in touch with your own receptors. So, like, say if you die traumatically, then you have like 2,000-3,000 years where you got to be on the bench, and you can't even come into life because you weren't harmonious enough when you died to return. Like, you can only enter life once it's in destruction and decay again. For a lot of beings can only be here when it's less real. If life was in complete harmony, certain things would be totally purged. Certain beings would be totally purged. They would not even be able to incarnate and exist their life. It's just the same way, like, if you inbreed and you create an albino, the albino can't live on the equator. It has to leave and go into a more seasonal place, and a more separate place where the equilibrium is separated through seasons, and things are at a different pace, because that's just, what the equilibrium of that being. The only thing that makes sense at that point. So a lot of beings can't exist in what is, because they haven't primed themselves, and they haven't went through enough lifetimes went forward in self-realization to where they could use their own light to return to the source of light, use their own eternity to realize eternity. As soon as you tap in, as soon as you reach a physical eternity in yourself, once you reach a certain level of resonance in this life, once you fully matured and then you reach that through like extensive fasting or whatever, then you taste and experience physical eternity. And you're not separated from eternity at that point. And the more that you can stay in touch with that, the more that you are almost chained to that experience and gravitate towards that, the more that the likes will attract. And then you move forward in return to yourself, to eternity. So if you have less people transitioning and retaining themselves through lifetimes, then you're going to have a hierarchy in the aboriginals. And then the parasites just follow what the aboriginals do. So if there was one pharaoh for every 100 people, the world would obviously be in a better place as far as harmony and respect goes. But if there's only one pharaoh per 7 billion people, then it creates a massive hierarchy. And that's just going to manifest outwardly for the parasites too. The parasites now have a hierarchy because the parasites are just now, they mirror whatever the aboriginals do. It's like the light and the shadow. If the light recedes, then the shadow recedes. It's like if there's more light, then there's going to be shade. You know what I mean? If it's, it's just relative. That's it. It's all based on the angle. You know what I mean? And at different times in the golden period, you would look at it like high noon, and there's not much shade. You have so much light that there's not much shade. Because every day is like a season, just like every month's a season, every week's a season, or however you want to look at it. Yearly seasons. These are all seasons of consciousness on top of being physical consciousness going through its things. The effects of consciousness. We can look at it like that. The physical realm is like an effect from consciousness. It's not the cause. And consciousness itself is what is. This is the effects from what is. You could look at this like the slowed down dream or a slower manifestation rate of dreaming or a muffled dream. You know what I mean? It's really, this is a dream and the reality is what is. And this is an extension of what is. And the further you go into what isn't, the further you're going to separate your physical self from your metaphysical self. And then you just live in blackness. Anybody that's ever blacked out and their body didn't, and people are like, yo, man, you went crazy, man, last night. You didn't know? But nah, I blacked out. And that's what it's like. And your body's going on, running around for hundreds of years. And then you finally reincarnate 1,000 years later and you got all this mess to clean up because you're still responsible for your body. And most people just keep quitting. They quit and go, and then they just stay being seasonal beings. And then it's like less light being brought to what is. The more light that could be brought to what is, then the more what is can expand in a sense. Each dream will be not separate. Each layer will be not separate from what is. The communication will be clear. So, let me see what else I didn't go through over here. Yeah. And then if you have a period where people are in accord with life or nature or what the organic is, then the parasites themselves will be beneficial. It's like if the best athlete wants his opponent at its best. You want your parasites to be at their best in a sense because it's like temptation. Like it's your guidelines for what not to do, what not to become. It's just like magic needed Larry Bird in the sense that it's probably not the best example, but it's a good one. Magic needed Larry Bird because he couldn't let Larry Bird win because then people wouldn't know reality. They wouldn't know the truth. You know what I mean? Even though Larry Bird, you got to give him credit for just being a machine, robot, parasite that he is, that he would just shoot that many jumpers relentlessly and not really have, the social life or a life like a Magic Johnson or something. But you got to love that though, because every minute you're slacking, Magic Johnson, the parasite is shooting jumpers. And you can't be mad when he wins. The years when the Celtics win, you can't even be mad because you know that you did something at some point where you slacked off. And so that's when the parasites are good as far as pushing you. And so if things is in order, then the parasites will be beneficial. It won't be adversity in the sense of like hate or destructive adversity. It just be good competition. You know, competition makes everybody better. Friendly competition makes everyone better. You know, you're pushing it, you're pushing yourself, then other people pushing you, pushing themselves, and you push each other, and everybody just gets better results. And then the price goes down of everything if there's competition. You know, if everybody's selling, if everybody's growing the best plants they can and the most organic permaculture that they can, and everybody has, you know, all the best things, then everybody can just trade, and it's not so much pressure because the competition is there. When competition drives the price down, if you have a bunch of competition, a bunch of people selling one thing, then the price is going to go down. So that's, you know, that's the case, is they want to eliminate competition, friendly competition, not destructive competition. You know, that they want to eliminate that in this world because that exposes the truth. Friendly competition does expose the truth. So I think that's about it, man. That's really about it, man. It's you can look at the whole Great Reset period like heaven for parasites, and the Jubilee period like heaven for souls. However you want to look at it, man. But again, there's ley lines or law lines throughout the world, and la ley means la law in Spanish. So you got ley lines all over the world, and that's a grid. It's an organic grid, and then there's people with birthrights, organic people, aboriginals that are tied to these places. And like I was saying about America being the pinnacle of civilization, Sedona being the pinnacle of civilization, it was all probably one thing. I want to say from Utah down through Sedona, down through Mexico into where the Maya were. And I just, yeah, I feel like Pharaoh always says,